What's going on, everybody? And this is the Doc Chat bonus. And I'm telling you right now, if you have never seen this many black doctors in one place, you are looking at history, baby. I'm telling you, we're doing right here on the Doc Chat. We are live on LinkedIn, we are live on YouTube. I got the amazing doctors, Dr. Young, Dr. James, Dr. Rencher, Dr. Daniel, Dr. Harold, and Dr. Watson. We are on the Doc Chat today, and we talking about the topic that is going around social media like crazy. We're not gonna waste no time. I'm gonna jump right into this video. We're gonna watch it, and we're gonna jump into the conversation. So let me get it pulled up. And if you don't know, it is who would date a bus driver? Who would date a bus driver? All right, let me make sure we up. We rolling. Here we go.
Today's sidebar starts with a note of gratitude. I want to thank the culture for making my interview with Dr. Iyanla Vanzant one of the most popular and actively engaged content offerings the Grio has produced. So before I tell you my thoughts, let's replay the clip that had some of y'all deep into your feelings. I do want you to speak, Iyanla, to how women need to position ourselves so that we can be in our divinity, so we can have our crowns right, how we can create and not build, when some of us, quite frankly, feel that the men that are available to us, and I'm talking about across the color spectrum, across the age spectrum, trust me, I've done them all, they are not positioned to protect nor provide because of some of the statistics we just talked about. They're not earning the incomes, they're not having the resources, and some of them are not even showing up in the leadership.
Would you date a bus driver? Would you date
if he owns the bus? If he owns it. If he owns the bus.
That's a problem. That's a problem.
Now let's address the response to the interview and what some of y'all are calling a backlash. So let me be clear. First, I am a professional disruptor. So backlash is my business. And I will always take it on the chin for the sake of advancing the work, conversation, or movement. So know that I am completely unfazed by the onslaught of nasty comments, wishing me a sad, lonely, bitter existence until my untimely death. Now, that is some weird energy to be wishing onto a Black woman, especially one who has dedicated her life to the liberation of Black folk. But, whatever, I guess, go off. See, I wanted to talk about how do we close the gap between Black women who do show up in a so-called masculine posture, those of us that are providing and building and protecting due to circumstances that we might feel make us feel that if we don't do it for ourselves, we will have to go without the resources and protections we need to feel safe in this world. But Dr. Iyanla went in a different direction. She asked me a personal question. And y'all know I have been extremely transparent about the fact that my life choices and my chosen lifestyle are far outside of the norm. So when I said that I would date the bus owner, a lot of y'all heard something different. Some of you heard the following: bus drivers are whack, bus drivers are broke. Oh, and I'm too good for a bus driver. The only thing is, y'all made that part up. See, I said what I said. But then some of y'all started talking about salaries and hourly wages, pensions and benefits. And that's wild because I was never talking about money at all. I was talking about Black ownership, but some of y'all made it about money. I'm talking about ownership, Black enterprise and entrepreneurship, because really I am talking about Black liberation. And if you read my book, you'll understand why. So I'm standing 10 toes down on that position, and I don't really care if you're hurt or offended by it. And since some of y'all are already big mad, let me go ahead and make you incensed. So out of the 50,000 plus comments posted on social, I only saw a handful that even considered the possibility of a bus owner being a more aspirational position and recognizing that I am actually speaking and pouring into the ascension of Black men when I said what I said. But see, no, some of y'all were too busy naming and shaming me personally and Black women in general as undesirable, gold diggers, and much worse. Now, I suspect that some of y'all are the same men that were bringing home C's and D's on your report cards, only to then be coddled by parents that said, well, that's okay, as long as you're doing your best. Well, listen, I love and believe in the excellence of Black men. So no, my dear, C's and D's or any other form of mediocrity is not okay. No, I will not create a soft place for you or anybody that I love to fall comfortably into the bigotry of low expectations. So I'm gonna say one more time, there's absolutely nothing wrong with driving a bus. My mother Gloria drove one for years. But could it be that Black America has been sold a narrative of average, regular, and typical being good enough for us? Well, see, that's called white supremacy. And in this case, it takes the form of conditioning Black Americans to happily accept being a permanent American underclass. But see, because I know the truth about Black folk in America, no, average is not and will never be good enough for me. And the gag is, I don't think it's good enough for you either.
Welcome to the Doc Chat, folks. I'm your man, Dr. John C. Turner, aka the Professor JT. I got some credible doctors on right now. If you are watching us, we want comments, we want questions. These are the folks you want to ask. I got an EDD on, I got 2 doctor therapists on, and I have 4, count them, 4 PhD. We going in here. We going in today. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna give my folks chance 4 minutes to talk about what they saw, what they've heard, and give a perspective. And then we're gonna go round robin. So hey, let us know if you're checking us out. We're gonna start with my friend Dr. Young. Dr. Donald Young, you are on the Doc Chat. Give me your thoughts on the topic. Would you date a bus driver?
Noop, I almost want to defer to one of the ladies. I want to be a gentleman in pure Noop fashion. As I was raised and made, I'm gonna let one of the
you hear that? Well, hey, we'll go with
to one of my beautiful sisters on here to let them because I'm still scratching I'm processing. And I've watched that video a few times. So
yeah. Well, we'll go with Dr. James and we'll kick right back to you. That's all good.
That's perfectly fine. So I'm Dr. James. Let's start there because I don't even know where to start with this. All right, so I hear what the sister's saying, and I might not have the most popular opinion amongst the sisters. Here's my thought process on it. I think that for so long, we as women, particularly women of color, who are educated and of a certain socioeconomic standard, we have our boxes and we have our expectations. And I'm not asking any woman of any background to lower those expectations. But what I am asking is that we start to look at the reality of we're so busy looking for the jag of our ideology that we may be missing the Rolls Royce right in front of us. And if you know anything about that, we know that they're both luxury cars. The difference between the Jag and a Rolls Royce is a Rolls Royce is custom made, right? It is custom made for the prospective buyer. So we are so busy looking at this luxury and this ideology of what that luxury individual looks like for us, for our standards, for our bills, that we may be missing out on the custom made luxury individual for us. You understand what I'm saying? That person may not be where you are. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying fall in love with aspirations. I'm not saying to fall in love with dreams, because that's not reality. What I'm asking you to do is meet someone where they are and see that they have the potential to be greater. And maybe with your development, maybe with your partnership, maybe with your expertise, you can reach those levels together. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we meet people and they're not where we are, but together we exceed where we both need to be. Right? So Ileana Vanzant didn't just say to her, would you date a bus driver? I understand what the sister is saying, right? I understand what the sister is saying about entrepreneurship and Black enterprise. The question was, would you date a bus driver? And her answer flat out was, hell no. No, I'm not going to date. Does he own the company? Then no, I'm not dating him. But how do you know that in dating this man or woman or whatever your preference may be, you may not transport him into that ownership role? You may have him surpass that ownership role. Maybe now he owns a fleet of buses with your partnership, with your guidance, with your fortitude, with your strength. You guys can conquer that and be somewhere where, where you far exceed that. I'm just saying, my first marriage, my educational levels matched. Guess what? We did not pair. My second marriage, I far out matched my spouse in education. But guess what? With her, I even excelled myself educationally. So it's not all about where I meet you, man. It's where we end up. And sometimes we do it to ourselves. We box ourselves so much so. We have so many guidelines and restrictions that we restrict ourselves from what could possibly be one of the greatest things we have coming for us. We take away our own strength. We take away our own ability to thrive and then we sit there and we complain that we can't find what we're looking for.
Wow.
You're not looking in the right places.
That's good.
That's my 4.
4 minutes. Oh, she got the
Come on.
marble on and everything. I like it. And she hits us with the cheers with the wine. I like it.
You know what,
I
Dr.
like
James?
it.
That's what I should have done. I should have poured me a glass of wine.
Hey,
I didn't even
you
think
You got
about
to
that.
pour it on this one, sis. You
I
got
didn't
to
even
pour it
think
on
of
this
it.
one now.
This is real light. If you need to step away, go get a wine, go get something to drink. That's okay. We hitting real topics here on the Doc Chat. If you're liking what you're hearing, go ahead, hit us up in the comments. We're so glad that so many people already are tuning in. They want to hear the perspectives, and that's what we want to put out there. And Dr. Whitty, we appreciate you for checking in. Now we're going to head back to my friend, Dr. Young. It's on you. Now, are you ready? I'll be honest with you. If you feel like you need a minute,
Hey, they say you stay ready. You don't have to get ready. I want to be a gentleman.
I
want
got
to be a
7:12 on my clock, and you
Come
are
on.
up on the Doc Chat. Your 4 minutes starts now.
I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate all the doctors that are on tonight and being willing to talk about a topic that it's light, but there's some underpinnings and some things that we can speak to and that we should have a discussion about. I'll start by saying I didn't. Yesterday I was having breakfast with some of my frat brothers, and one of them said to me, he said, prior to this, I never knew who Ebony K. Williams was. And I go back to her saying she's a professional disruptor. And so from a marketing standpoint, to market her book, to market her opinions, this has gotten people talking. So she has done that part well. Part two is, the second thing I would say is that she has a preference. Everybody's preferences can be what they are. And so if her preference is if she wants a certain kind of man and she's willing to wait or continue to go through that process to find what she wants, that's her freedom, that's her business, that's her liberty. I have no issue with that. But I think there's some things to unpack about the conversation, right? So I have lived in Atlanta 15 years, 16 years almost, and 10 of them I was a bachelor. And so when I say I got the receipts on how this conversation, I got the receipts, monetary and otherwise. And one of the things that I would say that being single in Atlanta that I found out was I was in similar situations, at least 2 or 3 occasions where met young ladies, we kind of kicked it, hung out, and later to find out that they weren't completely interested because they didn't think my profile was large enough. And at the time, I didn't have my doctorate, but dual master's degrees, homeowner, made a certain income, very stable in my career, doing what I thought was pretty well. And they were like, nah, I want to be in a certain echelon of society. I want to roll in certain circles. You got to make a certain amount. That was their thing. And so, like, I see how this happens. But I think going back to Dr. James's comment about the checklist, so many of them have these very elaborate and extensive checklists. And I want to know who gave you this checklist? Where did the checklist come from? So I think there's some things we have to talk about relative to modeling behavior, what you saw in the home growing up, pathology, what's your family background like relative to relationships? Because I've had some of those same women say what a man should be or shouldn't be, and I'm like, you don't even know your daddy. And I'm not being smart when I say that, but I'm being very serious into how can you define what I'm going to be in terms. And she mentioned, Ebony K. Williams talks about protecting and providing. They're two different things. I think during the conversation we would do it some justice by peeling those layers back on what is protected and what is provided, because it's not always economic. So
Yes.
I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Ooh, y'all need to stop right now. We got a lot of show left and y'all already on fire. I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you, Dr. James is showing you that love. She came with it. Dr. Young came with it. And we got some more doctors going to come with it too. Now, I'm going to move to my doctor therapist who I have on here. And we're going to go ladies first again. Ladies first, out of respect. Dr. Valerie Daniel, we appreciate you for being on tonight. And you got 4 minutes. I got 7:16. Welcome to the doc chat. Let me hear what you got.
Well, thank you again for having me on, number one. So, and Dr. James, yes, I completely agree with you in terms of what you said. As we talked about before the show started, we took this to our girls, which is what I did yesterday, because as everybody is saying, I didn't know who Ebony K. Williams was before this either. But I really wanted to see what my girls would say. I've known all of them, most of them since I was 18. And so I wanted to talk with them because we're all professional women, and I wanted to see where they were. And I took the position with them of Ebony, and shout out to my girls because I believe some of them are watching. But I took the position of Ebony and trying to put myself in her spot. And so I agree, Dr. James. I think sometimes we can definitely miss the Rolls Royce that's in front of us. However, I would also say, and this is where for me some of my research and my dissertation comes in, Black women in general come into relationships with more education, as you said. They're usually more economically stable, all of those things. And so my question was, as I said to my girls, what is wrong with saying that I want the most for myself? In our communities, especially historically, we have looked at pouring the educational money, time, and effort into the girls and sending our boys to the military to, manual labor jobs. Well, when that woman now gets the master's, the PhD, why is it wrong for her to now say, I do want someone that comes in at the same level or better than I am? Why would that be wrong for a Black woman to come into a relationship wanting that? Not excluding the bus driver, but why would it be wrong for her to have those aspirations to want that? If I've been instilled from a child, and I'm a product of the South, raised in South and in New Jersey, I know historically that was the thing. My uncles, everyone, they military, manufacturer, labor job, something. The daughters, my aunts, you went to college. You went because that was your ticket. Girls were going to be able to make it out. Well, that's great. But then what happens when I'm an adult and I'm ready to settle down and find a significant other? Because if everybody else, the men, are doing manual labor jobs and I'm more successful economically, education, all of those things, and you are still taught as the man to be the head of the household and run, how are we going to do that? And in my own work with clients, I work with some very high-powered women who are struggling with men who have more blue-collar jobs, and that conflict of I'm the one that's flexing, not that I necessarily want to flex, but I can flex, and it becomes a bit of a problem because I'm supposed to be the man and I'm supposed to make all the decisions. So again, I'm with you, Dr. James. I don't want to exclude the bus driver because, as Yanela said, if you treat me well and you love your mom and all those things, that's fantastic. And we can possibly grow together. But I don't think there's anything wrong with a woman of means, a woman of higher educational status, aspiring to have a partner where she says, for once, I don't have to reach down. I can reach up because you're going to reach down and pull me up.
Wow. Ooh.
Tough.
Dr. Harold, you up, man? I mean, I'm just saying. We are on the doc chat, and I appreciate folks for tapping in already. And thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate that. And we're going to another Jonathan here. You up, Dr. Harold? Welcome to the doc chat. Your thoughts on would you date a bus driver from Miss Ebony?
Well, I appreciate Dr. Daniel's perspective to begin with. And just like her, what I would say first and foremost is when it comes to Ebony K. Williams' perspective on whether she would date a bus driver, who am I really to fight with her about her criteria and who she's willing to date? For all I know, she could have a criteria where her men need to be an Avenger or part of the Justice League. So that's like really not my place one way or the other. But what I do appreciate that came out of this conversation is a lot of bigger issues that kind of came out of this conversation. And I actually listened to her on the Breakfast Club, and when they asked her more questions about this, she basically doubled down about she wants people to be more than average. And I have this perspective of I've worked in a lot of different fields, working with the Department of Labor, of watching what it looks like for these different fields and these different jobs to even get people into these different jobs, such as a bus driver. They go through a lot, and these aren't necessarily average people per se. And then on top of that, one of my favorite books, if you haven't read it, because at the end of the day, something that came up is they keep talking about, okay, I'm high powered, I make six figures or whatever, and then I have this gentleman that has a blue collar job, right? And together we want to create generational wealth is some of the underpinnings or some of the underlining conversations that kind of came out of this, right? And there's this famous book, you can read it. It came out late 80s, early 90s. It's called The Millionaire Next Door, written by Thomas Stanley. And what he actually talked about in this book is that we have this warped perspective on what a millionaire actually looks like. And when he actually did the research with the people that were like millionaires in the community, he actually found a lot of people who were millionaires actually had these either blue collar jobs or jobs that we weren't still familiar with. Or so like there was many teachers on the list that ended up being millionaires on this list. And there was doctors, lawyers, and definitely some business owners. But just knowing that when it's not just about how much you make, it's actually about the resources that you're able to hold on to.
Yes.
So that's part of the perspective too. And something else that just kind of came up for me as we talk about this conversation is just I have a partner, me and my wife, we together for 9 years now. And I just realized as when you have a partner, there's different things that you as a partner you bring to the table. And if you have these two people in these two high power careers, there's things that needs to get done around the house. And unless you're outsourcing a lot of your things, you need each other to kind of work through these various things, especially if your goal is someday to have family. So keeping that in mind is about, at the end of the day, what this conversation is about is what does it take to find a good partner that's for you, and not necessarily looking at somebody and say, oh, your job is this, that automatically disqualifies you. What we need is good partners that's going to help build us. Secondly, again, we go into the research. Research speaking, when it comes to men, who makes more, single men or men that are married? Men that are married actually make more money. So what happens is you might meet a man, and where he's at that moment, he may only be, a bus driver, quote unquote. But when you get married, chances are, well, it's pretty good fact he's going to make a lot more money during that time frame. So again, if you're looking at somebody where they're at now and not thinking about the future, and you're only having these superficial ways of looking at careers, it's this is a bigger conversation that we need to have, and I'm glad we're having it together today. So
For sure.
yeah.
I'm telling you, my doctor therapist, they don't miss. They don't miss, Dr. Dale. They appreciate you. They appreciate you. They appreciate you. I'm telling y'all, this is the stuff that we need to make sure that we're realizing right now. This is a bigger topic. There's a bigger perspective here, and these docs right now are hitting us up. So if you're checking out the doc chat, make sure you say hello. Make sure you give the thoughts on what you think about the great comments, the great tips, the great facts that these doctors are dropping right now. I got two more, and you know you put up your heavy hitters when you are about to hit a home run. Dr. Michelle Rancher, we appreciate you being on the Doc Chat. I got 7:25. You are up 4 minutes.
Okay. Well, first of all, everybody else, good evening. Each of your points has been really good so far, but I think I'm the only person on the panel so far who has a PhD, yes, but my husband is actually considering becoming a bus driver. So Dr. Ebony K. Williams spoke about she wanted to marry or be with the owner of the bus fleet. My husband currently does not have a collar. He works in surgery. He's not a surgeon, neither is he an anesthesiologist. He actually is a surgical scrub nurse. So when he and I met over 16 years ago, I had a bachelor's of engineering. My engineering degree afforded me a certain kind of salary. But with an engineering degree in the tech sector, I've been downsized more times than I care to count. But it is my husband with the no collar who has not only kept our family afloat, but who pushed me into my master's degree and pushed me into my PhD journey. Because of his job in the no collar world, not being a surgeon, not being an anesthesiologist, he had the flexibility in his schedule. And he's able to go to his bosses and say, hey, he has a wife who was doing advanced studies. Can I change my work schedule? Had he been in the tech sector like myself, I don't know what would happen to our mortgage. I couldn't tell you. Wow. Luckily for me, every single time we've had an opportunity to get a different degree, my salary has grown exponentially. And that's a wonderful thing. But as you're talking about generational wealth, wealth is not from one person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe wealth is not just finances. It's not just dollars and cents. Wealth is also about experiences. Wealth is also about being a lifelong learner. My children can never say what they cannot do, because they've seen their mother after 50 go back and get a PhD. They've seen their mother as they were little ones go and get a master's degree and still work a full-time job at the same time. Come home and cook and clean and wipe noses and do homework with little kids and iron and do. I have no housekeeper in my home. So my husband and I take turns and we do X, Y, and Z. They're downstairs with him right now, bathing the dog. And so again, when you talk about having a life partner, my husband is ride or die, not just saying in terms of being with me for the journey. My husband is 3-time deployed. So when you talk about my master's degree, that's on Uncle Sam, because I'm a wife of an Army. I'm an Army wife. I'm a Navy mom. So when I came into my household, I'm also in a blended family. And so one of the things that I've been able to tell my oldest son, my husband's son biologically, and talking to his wife before they got married, was like, listen, there are going to come times in your journey where he may be making more and vice versa. You may be making more, but it doesn't matter as long as your household is healthy, long as your relationship is a healthy one. It doesn't make a difference. And so unfortunately, Ebony K. Williams's experience with her maternal experience, with her growing up, challenging nonetheless. But a lot of what Iyanla Vanzant spoke to me, a lot of what she said about having a certain kind of feminine energy and a certain kind of masculine energy. I work in the tech sector. Most of my colleagues are typically 60 to 65 years old, mostly older white men. And so oftentimes when I have to deal with that kind of male, sometimes aggressive energy, I love to come home to a man who is like, listen, we don't mind takeout tonight, or we want to have your pasta shells, or we want to have some Caribbean food, but whatever I'm fixing, whatever we are fixing together, we are doing it together, because I can say my husband will love on me and I'm happy and we are having a wonderful experience. So to be able to say that you have that kind of partnership, if I want to do another degree, my husband's like, okay, it's you studying, right? It's going to be your hair follicles, your brain cells. But at the end of the day, could anybody be prouder? And so the last time he was deployed, I was the one in the post office sending packages to Iraq and Afghanistan. That's the wife's job. So in my household, we believe in Proverbs 31. Most people believe that Proverbs 31 believes that who can find a virtuous woman. But I'm here to let you know, it's not the virtuous woman where the story begins. The story begins with her talking about she had 2 sons, one of her birth and one who she promised to. And in my household, I have a son that I gave birth to and a son who I promised to have my son, who was way older than my biological son. But that experience speaks about being in a blended household. The woman in Proverbs 31 was a globally minded woman. She didn't have time to be bickering about no foolishness. She was taking care of groceries. She was bringing in spices from afar. She bought fabric in. Her employees were well clothed, and her husband was sitting at the gates. So he may have been Uber. He may have been a bus driver. We don't really know. But what we do know for a fact is that he was sitting down doing something else while she had multiple jobs, multiple streams of revenue coming through her hands. And so to me, it is my mission to make certain that my daughter-in-law, and other women who are watching us are recognizing we can do amazing things. And when we have support of a loving partner that is healthy, that is committed, it doesn't matter if he's a bus driver, if he owns the entire fleet, or guess what, if he happened to be getting unemployment, it doesn't make a difference. What matters is that together you can build anything and you can go anywhere. Other people say you can't go, because I came out of Nassau, Bahamas. Nobody in my high school years would have ever thought PhD. That was not a part of my ambition, was not a part of my dream. But what I did know as a young girl was that I wanted to have a husband who was going to love on me, who was going to build a family together, who was going to love my mother, love my aunties and my uncles, love my family in the Bahamas. And in some cases, my husband is more Bahamian than I am, because he watching Bahamian news before I even watch this. He calling me to tell me, hey, turn on YouTube, X, Y, and Z is happening in the Bahamas. So he understands my culture. He embraces our culture. And likewise, me with his family. I think family and coming together is the overall goal. Okay. And so finances and careers and academics, unfortunately, that is the lie of colonialism. Yeah. They making us believe, if you believe these things, if you have, here's this master list. If you don't get the list all completed, then be by yourself. That's crazy. That's craziness.
Yeah. I'm telling you right now, this is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I'm telling you, I got one more doc up the bat. My cleanup hitter. That's my friend, Dr. Trenton. Watch.
And he's tweaking his neck. He's ready.
He's ready. He knows what he is when he gets up to the plate. We're going to get you off mute there. We're going to make sure you're already set and go. Good. 4 minutes, you're up. Welcome to Dr.
Well, I think everyone hit the nail on the head in terms of perspective this evening. But I want to kind of go in a different direction. I'm one of those educators who kind of like loves to get to the core of issue. And I think one thing that we need to consider is what I call the Gloria factor. And let me unpack that for you. During that interview process, she was asked the question, would she date a bus driver? And she said immediately, if they owned the bus company. But if you listen to that video, she talked about her mother being a bus driver. That may be a trauma that has triggered her to think that dating a bus driver is not a good thing, because we don't know the struggle that she had as a kid seeing her mother drive a bus. That may be the reason why she said what she said. Not that she cast disparity on anybody being a bus driver. My stepfather was a bus driver. Loved him to death. He worked hard. But guess what? He also had a side hustle too. So you can't really just box people in by saying, oh, well, they're a bus driver. You never know what other people, some people may, like was said earlier, they be driving the bus for the benefits. But their side hustle doesn't offer that, but you see them only as a bus driver, because there are bus drivers that are out there. Guess what? They have no problem dating, period. In all classes, all walks of life. It depends on the preference. But I think for her, it's something specific about the bus driver comment that triggered a trauma for her. Yes. There may be some backstory behind the whole bus driver process that we just have not seen or heard. Now, for me, sometimes I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, so we didn't know. I had no idea who Ebony K. Williams was. I promise I didn't. I was like, who is this lady? And why is she important? Now, all of a sudden, she's on this podcast with Iyanla Vanzant, and now she's talking about her book. Was this on purpose? And you just had to have a conversation so people would now go out and try to buy your book. But since we're talking about it, let's really dive deep into this thing. What hurt or pain have you gotten behind this whole bus driver process? Because again, it's specific, and she talked about her mother driving that bus. Now,
Yeah.
you hadn't said anything about your dad, and it is because the fact your mother had to drive a bus and that you saw her struggle, that you boxed this thing in that bus drivers are in a certain class.
Mm,
Where are we with this whole process?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, there are some great people in the service industry that do very, very well, that are very, very compatible with a lot of people. You know, my wife makes more money than me. I don't get mad about that because my wife pushed me to be the best educator that I can be. And that's what we have vibed on. But at the end of the day, guess what? If she stopped working today and became a sack lady at Walmart, I'm not going to turn my back on her because that's what she
right.
does.
Come on with it.
If we're compatible, guess what? We're compatible.
We're
Whatever industry,
compatible. Right.
wherever you work, that's the way it is. But again, I think there's some underlying trauma that young lady has, and that's what is missing. Why she wouldn't date
Yes.
a bus driver specifically.
Mm,
I told you I had my cleanup hitter, baby. You just hit it out the park.
yes.
Grand slam right there. We gonna load back up for a minute. We here on the doc chat. We got
Yes.
some great comments coming in. People are loving the
Yes.
conversation. They are loving it, and I'm telling you, these are the things we want to hear. Let us know that you're checking us out. Let us know some of the things maybe you went through, what you thought about the show. We're loading up again. I'm gonna go round robin again. We're gonna start back with Dr. James. And I because now you got a little bit more perspective. You done got something from
Listen.
everybody. So
Listen.
what's your next? I give you 3 minutes. I need y'all to stick with that time though. 3 minutes,
Let,
real quick.
let me
3 minutes.
let me go ahead and get my time right. 3 minutes. All right. So Dr. Watson, I have to agree with you because you just hit a word right there. You hit a word. Trauma. Trauma. We go into these relationships, these partnerships, these situationships, and not dealing with the trauma of our past. I can't expect you to be all that I want you to be when I still have trauma I'm trying to deal with back here. And you're absolutely right. When she started talking about it and she started saying my mother is a bus driver, you hear the hurt in her. You can hear the anger of what Alana Van Zant did. You know, it's like she hit a nerve. Like, how dare you ask me about me? Well, you posed the question, sis. You said, you can't find what you're looking for. And she simply asked you a viable question. Would you date a bus driver? Because if you're saying, and I quote, she said it, I've dated them all, right? Black, white, doesn't matter. All rich, poor. I've dated it all, right? And I can't find what I'm looking for. But then when she asked you a very simple question, would you date a bus driver? It was, wait a minute now. Wait a minute now. Listen, if you're having trouble finding what you're looking for, and again, here we go with this checklist, this everlasting checklist, right? We are women of a certain stature. We are women of a certain economic stature. We are women of a certain socioeconomic stature. We are women of a certain educational, degree. I need this. I need that. I need this. I need that. But if, like I said to you before we got on the show, right? If 10 of us are looking for this, that, and that, and there's only 5 people that fit that category, guess what's going to happen? Your man is my man, is his man too. We all going to be sharing because there's just not enough to go around, right? Because we are all seeking the same prototype. And I'm not saying lower your standards. I'm not even saying leave them by the wayside. But what is wrong with me meeting you where you're at? You are a good person. You treat me well. We work well together. In this, we can grow together, build together, excel beyond our expectations. What happened to that? You know, we keep talking about this love we keep seeing with our grandparents and great grandparents, and they were 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years married. Guess what they didn't do? They didn't say, you don't meet me where I'm at. You don't meet or excel my expectations. They met these people where they were, and they built together to achieve what they wanted to achieve. That's what we're missing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I keep going back to my relationship. My wife helped me build where I needed to be, and I help her build where she needs to be. And together, we have children that are far exceeding our expectations.
Powerful. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my 3.
Yeah.
Go on with it.
The
I'm ready.
wine glass.
Let's go. Let's go. I'm waiting for the comments.
Dr. Young, my brother, you up, man. 3 minutes. I got 7:40, 7:43. Be your time. You up.
My God. Let me start by everybody is making extremely valid points, and sometimes from a slightly different lens and perspective. And so my appreciation for that is pretty significant. One thing that we hadn't gotten into yet, but I feel the spirit compelling me to bring it up and bring it out is, and I just look at my own situation. When I was single for a decade, having a good time in Atlanta, and when I decided to marry, right, one of the bros said, what was different about her that from all these other women you dated and these experiences you had? I said, she fed my spirit. I prayed for a Proverbs 31 woman. I prayed to grow in my Ephesians 5 manhood. She fed my spirit, man. And that was the defining difference. And so I think sometimes when we step back out of the list and step back out of what society is telling us to do and what society is telling us to be the bridge to our happiness, and we get on them knees and you plead the unheralded blood of Jesus, he begins to move and activate some things. So for me, that was one of the things that spearheaded and kind of changed that. And in that, right, he'll give you your heart's desire. But while we're talking practical worldly things, right, I think Dr. Daniel makes a great point insofar as not training our boys for that greater thing, and not that military service and some other things aren't good, but that girls are being pushed to college, boys are being pushed into the labor force and so forth. I think about, I chair a scholarship foundation, and every year young ladies come in at a disproportionate rate that we give scholarships. They're going off to school. I went to an HBCU because on my recruiting trip, the coach said it's 13 women for every guy. Sign me up, boss. I don't care how bad or good this team is. It's 13-1. I'm here, right? And so that's leaving our sisters to graduate and go into graduate school and postdoc study and into corporate America and sometimes to do it alone. So I think we absolutely there's some pathology we need to get to, but we need to begin to shift that narrative and expectation of our boys.
They loving what y'all saying. Dr. James, they showing you those love. I'm telling you, right there.
I see that.
It's some beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. So I'm back to my Black therapist. They up for a second time. And Dr. Daniel, there's a few doctors on here that came back and showed you love now. They're like, wait a minute, you opening up some things maybe I didn't think about, which I appreciate. You up.
Well, Dr. Young, I want to thank you for that, because I think that is part of it. In terms of my sense was the ownership of kind of making sure that Black men are able to be successful is needing that Black woman. If I'm just going to stick with Iyanla and Ebony, that Black woman to come in and be the encourager, the supporter, the motivator, which is great. But again, Black women wind up having 64.1% of the bachelor's degrees, as opposed to Black men having 24%. And that number continues to rise for Black women with every degree, and it goes lower for every Black man with every degree. So if a Black woman is, again, encouraged, supported to be this educational powerhouse, this professional powerhouse, and from my own research, they generally come into situationships, relationships, whatever, carrying multiple roles. They're caregivers, they're nurturers, they're often the financial backbone of their family systems. And so when they come into relationships, they are looking ideally for someone that is going to be able to be a hand up, a supporter for them, not someone that they also have to feel like I've got to pull you up to try to be someplace with you. And if I, again, just stick with Ebony's perspective, if I'm a made person, I've done my whatever it is. And as you said, Dr. James, the pickings for Black women are minimal when it comes to Black men.
Yes, yes.
Then to some degree, we are saying to Black women, you do have to settle. And again, I'm not saying that the bus driver doesn't have $1 million sitting in the bank. There are plenty of bus drivers and teachers that have died with lots of money.
Mhm.
What I said to my girls yesterday was, what's wrong with a Black woman saying, I want the character, I want the education, and I want the financial means of where I already am, where I've already been. If I've gone to school, did the master's, did the bachelor's, did the PhD, I put the time in, put the work in, you can be the best bus driver in the world. And yes, if you've got aspirations to own the bus company, yeah, I'm down. But what does that also mean in terms of, for me, in terms of my own situation, for what I've done and what I'm doing? And again, not saying that we can't build together, because we can, but I think for Black women, again, if I'm just sticking with where Ebony is, potentially, I'm already carrying so many people when I get to this place. I'm already carrying my family, my whomever, because I've raised my niece and nephew. I've taken care of this person. I've done this, I've done that. And I've still achieved all of these things that historically you said I needed to achieve. What is wrong with saying I want a partner that potentially is going to come in and make my life just a smidge easier? And not just on the financial things, but we both understand the struggle of where we've come from and what we're doing and where we're trying to go, because we're at a similar level. What's wrong with that?
That's powerful. Absolutely powerful. I'm telling you, these perspectives are, I mean, this could be a whole dissertation in itself, folks. But we already got doctorates, so we ain't going
I was going to say, somebody else out there needs to pick it up and run with it.
Somebody out there pick it up and put it down.
We've already done
Pick it up
ours.
and put it down.
Dr. Harold, you're up, slick. 3 minutes. Give me what you got.
All right. So with the trauma piece that we've kind of been talking about, I like to lean on Dr. Drew, one of my favorite doctors to kind of listen to. And he talks about how if people continue to go into this cycle or pattern where they're dating the same person with the same different names, so that you continue to date the same narcissist over and over, they just got a different name. What's happening is we're in a pattern, and we kind of need to learn how to get outside of that pattern. And part of that is really like getting into therapy and addressing like, what are my patterns and behaviors that's continuing to put me in this position where I continue to pick the wrong type of character traits and continue to get myself in this place where I'm not able to find a successful long-term partnership, where I'm not just looking at this person based off of their job title, but I'm also looking at what they can bring as a partner to help me on a day-to-day basis. So some of the other things I think about too is just, while I sit here with this doctorate degree, I've had a chance to work in the Department of Labor, and I've had a chance to visit companies, and I've seen that there's young men, there's jobs that are needed, whether it's in industrial positions, or if we're talking about construction or mechanics. We need these positions. And not only that, these people, they can command a lot of money and resources, and they could be great breadwinners to families. So while I do appreciate being a doctor, sometimes when I'm talking to young men and young women, I am like, okay, you want to go back to college? What is your ultimate goal? Do you necessarily need to go and get a doctorate or a master's to actually do that? Is there another way to do it? Because when it's all said and done, right, a lot of us, we have our doctorates, and maybe we might be commanding a hefty income. But if you look at somebody who's taken a trajectory where, say, they did get straight out of high school and they went straight into like a bus company, such as in my area, SEPTA is one of the biggest companies, and these gentlemen, if they go straight into high school, they can command a six-figure income by the time they're within their 15 or 20-year period in the position. So say if you took that route where right out of being 18, you went into this position and you just worked a stable job, they come in and they're meeting you, they may have like quite a bit of money in the bank, and they don't necessarily have the burden of having to pay back student loans and debts and things like that. So again, this is a great partner for you And if you're just looking at this job title alone and disqualifying them right away, you're not getting to a great partnership. You're disqualifying potential great matches is part of, my take on this.
Okay. Dr. Rencher, the Bahamas is speaking to all of us right now. I think we all need to go down there.
So each of you have made excellent points, but I have to go back to Dr. Watson. When you spoke about the Gloria effect, I believe there was a statement that Ebony K. Williams said about absent fathers. Now, we don't know if her father was absent because she didn't really go too heavily into it. But I can give you a part of my actual narrative is being raised in a 3-generational single mother home. My father was a part of my life, but was not a part of my everyday life. But I did have a lot of other men in my community, uncles, godfathers, grandfathers, just neighbors who always consistently spoke into my life. Lots of teachers who consistently pushed and challenged and encouraged me to go into different spaces and do things that was very different. I was a young girl that went into STEM in the 1980s in the Bahamas, completely unheard of that you like differential equations and that you like physics. So I was definitely encouraged into those spaces. But the thing is that what was different for me, apart from obviously having a strong foundation of God and faith in my life, it was extremely important for me to recognize that while my mother may have had challenges financially, and there was some struggle being a school teacher in the Bahamas, one of the things that I can definitely say that she never gave me any negative about my dad. My dad did his life. She did her life. They raised me. They co-parented. That was way before the term co-parenting was even a thing. Yeah. But I was definitely raised having a strong sense of self and a strong understanding of the role of men and the importance that people can have different interests and different perspectives. Yeah. And I think what's important in this discussion about the possibility of being a bus driver. I think I began saying that my husband is considering becoming a bus driver. And for me, that's going to be his third career option. That's after military retirement. That's after VA retirement from the hospital system. That is now a third career plan of action. For me, I'm like, listen, if you want to get off your legs from doing surgery all day and you want to just ride the bus in the morning and ride the bus in the evening, hey, I know one thing for sure, ain't nothing going to happen on that bus. My husband been in war many times. There will not be, as we say in the Bahamas, won't start nothing, won't be nothing. And so for me, if he is considering the factor of shifting out of the hospital system narrative and going into the bus system world, then by all means, we live in the state of Tennessee. So if the state of Tennessee has had a bus driver shortage for months, in fact, well over a year. There's been months, that my kids have literally been on my front step, and the bus will text me to say the bus is going to be half an hour late. And I'm like, really? like how you going to get to the school if the bus? So I've literally had to carry my kids to school because of bus driver shortages. And so if we need to say, listen, ladies, he may be driving the bus today. He may never own the fleet. But unfortunately, you have to be understanding of what's the kind of person that you are. Who are you? If you have a checklist for him, what is his checklist for you?
Ooh, yeah.
Because I think a lot of women in our age range today have a checklist of I have a bachelor's degree, or I have a master's degree, or I have a PhD, and I have a list. And he must be tall, dark, and handsome. He must be this. He must be that. He must have no children. He must have a 840 score. He must have all these things. But what's your checklist? Do you cook and clean, ma'am? Oh. I have an older son, and I told him straight from him before he considered getting married, if you like to have a clean house, maybe you want to find a young lady who does not have an allergy to Clorox. Maybe if you happen to like a meal that is home cooked, and if you don't cook, you can't expect her to cook after. Okay, so if she may not be Betty Crocker, I'm showing my age here. If she's not Betty Crocker in the kitchen, at least does she know how to order good food and pick it up? Because she's worked 50, 60 hours. Let's be honest.
Right.
Yeah. My grandmother cooked every single day. Yeah. But I'm not cooking every single day. We have leftovers. Today my kids had leftovers. and they are
Well,
fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cook tomorrow,
that's right.
but they are fine. And so, ladies, if we're gonna be honest with ourselves, if he has to have and meet all of these criteria, all these amazing criteria, amazing requirements, he must be. Come on, do we have a list for ourselves? And is that list inclusive only of having red bottom shoes and edges? Do we need to have more than that in our lives? So I'm just saying, if he gonna be a bus driver, do you know how to change the oil in your car? Do you know how to change your tires? Do you know what's your FICO score?
Yeah, yeah. I'm telling you.
So what's your checklist? So if you gonna give him a checklist, he must not be a bus driver. Then fine. If you want the CEO of Greyhound or whatever company system, wonderful. Go find that CEO. But guess what? He might not want you. Because you may not be wife material. You may think you have a PhD or you get a master's degree, but you might not be nice. You might not be pleasant. He mightn't be able to carry you around his family and his friends. Yes, you may have this education, but you may not be a nice person. You may be nice nasty, and he may just not want that. And so, unfortunately, the conversation goes back and forth. We must be able to make certain that we hold ourselves accountable. Iyanla spoke at length about the energy that certain industries, and she said, they both had a law degree, and Iyanla was like, "That's why I left the law.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not a coder." Because I don't like the energy from coding. I could do it academically, absolutely. I get the skill, but there's certain kind of energy. I tell my children all the time, before you even think, they're in middle school, before you even put yourself out for a middle school team or whatever, check the energy in the room. You may not want to be on that team, because if everybody ain't being pleasant and receptive to you, that's okay if they don't like you, because you're going to find your crew, you're going to find your groove.
That's right.
But to me, it's about making certain that you are honest with yourself and that you are prepared for the rigors of being a wife.
That's true. That's good stuff. That's amazing stuff. Dr. Watson, hey, you bring us on home. We need what you got. I'm gonna give you. We got a few minutes until we hit that top of the hour, so I'm gonna give you 5 minutes. I need a strong 5 minutes, and then I'm going into questions for all of y'all that I got cooked up. Dr. Watson.
I want to just to quickly say, Dr. Young, I'll be in Atlanta in October, so I'm gonna look you up so we make sure to have lunch with you.
Say less, brother. Say less.
Down in Atlanta. I don't know how you're supposed to follow that one. I think that's unfair for me to have to step up to the plate behind that. But I want to piggyback on a lot of things that everyone has said.
Okay.
Dr. Young talked about matching the energy. One of the things that my grandmother told me a long time ago, she said, you have to be aware of spiritual warfare, because spiritual warfare will come to keep you from spiritual welfare.
Yes.
Let me say that again. Spiritual warfare will help prepare you and protect you from spiritual welfare. So everything we go through in life is a test to either hit the next level or to stay in the same spot. And she would say, which one do you want to do? And I was like, wow, man, this old lady would drop gems. And I'm like, man, I wasn't always old enough to understand what she meant, but I got it as I got older. And what Dr. Young was talking about is what we used to call in the old church being equally yoked to somebody, whether they're a bus driver, whether they sweeping up hair in a barbershop, whether they are the HVAC guy, which are all these people that we need, because you don't call a barber to come fix your HVAC unless he got that skill. You call somebody who is an expert in that area. But when we're talking about matching energy, I have 3 daughters, and I tell my daughters the same thing that my dad said to my sister: don't settle for just any and anybody. Anything and anybody. Don't do that. Okay. You want someone who matches your energy. It's not that if they drive a bus, so be it. That's okay. That's fine. But they have to match your energy. You have to be with that person. I don't have to be with. The other part that pains me about this whole process, and let me I might step on a toe or two when I say this.
She had 10 toes down, so go ahead, Fred. Go ahead.
They didn't ask Kim Kardashian if she dated a bus driver. They didn't ask Paris Hilton. They showed and asked Ivanka Trump, would she date a bus driver? Because guess
Yes.
they wouldn't do it.
Yes.
Because I have gone to school with people of other ethnicities who are in school with a plan to marry into wealth.
Yes.
That's their plan.
Even with the
They're
degree.
in school just for the sake of going to school to say, my father or my mother is this person. I had to come to school, but I am already dating the son of Senator this person or President this person's child. That's who I'm dating. So it's like, okay, now you ask this lady, would she date a bus driver? And again, I go back to her trauma, but you're not asking these other people that question because you know what they're gonna say? No, I am not. I will not do it. So it's so much to this, but we just have to continue to teach our children and our children's children to be the best people that they can be, period, across the board. Forget about I tell my teachers all the time, forget about the buy-in. We have to shift from buy-in to ownership. And when I say own it, I'm talking about owning this work across the board. Be the best Dr. Young, Dr. James, Dr. Rensher, Dr. Daniel, Dr. Harold, Dr. Turner that you can be, period. And guess what? All those things that you're doing, it'll come back to you. I promise you. And I feel what Dr. Whitty just said. It's all about the rhythm. Play those drums the best you can. Because guess what? That rhythm, that person's going to fall right in your lap. You don't even have to look for them. Whether they driving the bus or they ordering somebody else to do it. I think that about sums it up, Doc.
I think other people agree as well.
He just dropped the mic. He just mic dropped on.
That's it.
He did.
This is Doc Chat, and you see 1 hour of power, and we got one more to go because I'm telling you, people still want more. They want to hear more. But I always, if you know me, the Professor JT, I got to throw in a good moment for y'all. And this is my moment that I have for y'all. I have one thing I have not seen out of all these discussions are people that brought solutions. That's what y'all here for. We're going to give some sort of solution to, okay, I know that I want a mate. What steps should I be taking to get a mate? Going off of what a lot of y'all said, that matches my spirit, my energy, who I am, so I can get and be the happy person that I want to be in a relationship. I want to answer to that question because that's what, to me, this is all about. And you know, you all have kind of alluded to, this isn't about the bus driver or who I wouldn't date or they got to have this. This is, I want somebody. I really do. But I don't know what I might be doing wrong or what might seem like is wrong out there, why that person isn't coming my way. And we have to look at statistics. Dr. Daniel said it, you know, hey, those numbers might not add up. You might not be in the right place. All those different things. But from you all right here, I think this is going to bring home so much right now. If you all would really say, I'm going to give everybody 5 minutes. Dr. Rensher, I love you. I do love you, but Bahamas be talking. I know Bahamas be talking. I love you. I need 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
So that's an interesting question.
Hold on. We gotta stay around the loop. So we don't stay around the same loop. So Dr. James is gonna be up.
Okay.
5 minutes. Set your time.
All right.
5 minutes.
You know, I got this timer
If
set.
somebody wants a relationship, what steps would you, even if you could talk to Ebony right now in this whole situation,
Right.
what would you tell her? What would you tell other black women? What would you even tell black men to get the relationship that they truly want at the end of the day? 5 minutes. Go.
Okay. 5 minutes and go. Okay. My thoughts on it. Let's get back to foundation. Let's get back to the foundational principles of what it is to be in a relationship, right? Let's take the time to get to know the individual. Let's not look at the end goal. I know that we as women, especially the older we get, the more together we are, we're already going into it with, before we even meet the guy, the girl, whatever you're into, before we even meet that significant other, we're already going into it with, the next person I meet better be husband wife material. Well, here's the problem with that. You're already going into it with the expectation of, I need to be married tomorrow. I need to have kids next week. I need to be at my success point of family in the next 6 months. Let's get back to foundation where we're getting to know people, where we're getting to build with people, where we're getting to grow with people. That's what's going to get us to where we need to be. Stop trying to chase the bag and start getting to know the person, right? Because in chasing the bag, we're not ending up with what we truly want and what we truly need. We're ending up with what looks good on paper. Everybody going to show you their representative. You're going to meet everybody representative on the onslaught, you know? But what happens when that representative leaves? Now you're stuck with the reality of what is. You fell in love with the representative. You fell in love with the dream of what could be. But now you stuck with the reality of what is, and now you pissed off because you was chasing what looked good on paper, what looked good on the onset, and now you stuck with this, and you don't like it. Take the time to get to build and know if this is the right fit for you, and it might be somebody that's not matching you right then and there. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to carry them. I heard what you said, Dr. Daniel. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to carry them. You know, I keep going back to my relationship now. You know, I met my wife, she was in beauty. She did hair. I'm sitting here with 2 bachelors and a master's. You know what, though? The hustle and the fight in her. We got married. She went for her associates in our marriage. She worked for a Fortune 500 company all within our marriage. She now graduating from her bachelor's and entertaining the idea of going for her master's while pushing me to go for my doctorate. So did I really carry her, or did she elevate me?
Wow.
Let's be real.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I don't even need to say no more. Let's start thinking about what we need to do.
That's it. That's it.
Stop chasing the bag, chasing the dream of what is, and look at the reality of what we have. You were right, Dr. Rancher. Some of us, we building checklists that we can't measure up to our damn self. You know, we expecting checklists that we're not ready to step up to. Let's start meeting people where they are and building together. Then maybe we'll get exactly what we want.
Yeah. Yeah. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. If the fellas don't mind, I'm gonna stay with the women right now. I'm gonna stay with the women. I'm gonna stay with the women. Dr. Young, we gonna come. I'm gonna stay with the women. I'm gonna say, hey, you gave this suggestion, so I'm gonna stay with the women on this.
I'm all for that.
All right.
I didn't say I want to touch this.
Well, we gonna get to the fellas. We gonna get the fellas. Dr. Daniel, we go with Dr. Daniel. So 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Somebody wants that relationship. They're coming to you, especially as a therapist. What would you give them?
Well, Dr. James, yes, I agree with you. I think we do need to think about what our checklists are in terms of not only what we want in a partner and what we bring to a partnership as well. My position would be, because again, I can only go on my own research and my own experience with the clients that I work with. And I would counter that many women, Black women especially, are coming to the table, doing all the things, even that you said, Dr. Rencher, they're cooking, they're cleaning, they're doing all of those things. And they're still getting the PhDs, they're still getting the doctorate degrees, they're still getting the masters, and doing all of those things, raising kids, doing all of that. And so if you want the relationship, as you alluded to as well, Dr. James, it is about taking the time. I'll go back to what my grandparents used to say. It's about courtship.
Yeah.
It is about getting to know someone for them. Again, as I even said to my girls, I want the combination, or I think if I'm saying what Ebony said, I want the combination of the character, the education, and the financial ability. All of those things should come together. I should come to the table with that as well. Ideally, Dr. Rencher, as you said too, being able to own my own part of that. But in terms of a relationship, it is about time. I meet with lots of women that are in situationships, as you said, Dr. James, and we're not necessarily taking the time to get to know someone. And then honeymoon phase is over, and you wake up, oh shit, I'm with someone where there were cautionary flags all over the place, and now what the hell do I do?
Yeah.
So my thing is, yes, it is about taking the time. Number one, it is also about doing the part in terms of investigating the character. What are the goals that that person has? And not only can they identify the goals, but I'll say here's maybe where Dr. Harold and I come in. What's the behavior that they exhibit that shows you that they have the motivation to do those goals, to get those goals accomplished? The bus driver is great if he's got goals that are aspiring above and beyond that and has the actual execution to do it. I'm all down for the bus driver. But if it's all talk and I have nothing else but talk, then we're in a whole nother space. So you need to be able to not only have your partner identify what their goals are, but demonstrate the behavior that shows that they have the ability to get to those goals. Then you've also got to be able to do, again, your own homework. You've both got to deal with honesty in terms of where we are when we meet. Can we actually build together? And be honest about that. And acknowledging those cautionary red flags on both sides as to whether or not they are deal breakers. You kind of alluded to that, Dr. Harold, in terms of kind of seeing whether we are a good fit. And if you're not, being able to be honest with that on both sides of the table so that you're not harming each other in the midst of realizing this may not be a good fit.
Dr. Rencher. Whew, man, maybe I shouldn't have made y'all go all together. It's a little warm in the sweater over here. Oh man,
It's a little toasty. It's a little toasty.
You're up, Dr. Rencher.
Dr. Daniel, if I can tap into your point of listening and taking time, I think for me, one of the most, and in my study, I didn't study anything of this nature. So this is just my personally lived experience. But in my experience, with my relationship with my husband, we not only took time, but I asked questions and then I waited for the answer or the answers. I had a previous relationship, if I could go back in history, and the person was less than truthful, made crazy amounts of money. Money was not an option. I mean, he was an oncologist, if I could really be transparent. He was an oncologist, so he made a lot of money, but he wasn't transparent. And so, while we could travel anywhere wherever I would think about traveling, I kept thinking, well, wait a minute. But here's what's important to me. That plane ticket, I have a plane, I got a passport. I've been traveling since I was like 6 weeks old. I've been traveling around the planet before I even met anybody. So travel was not a thing for me, wasn't a deal breaker. But it was important that the person would not only speak the truth, that the person would make space for me in his life and allowed me to make space, vice versa. And I wasn't hearing that. When my husband and I met, I was extremely clear with what I wanted my 5, 10 year, 15, 20-year plan to look like. I knew what I wanted my life to look like. Here's what I've done on my own. Dr. Young, I used to live in Atlanta. I left Atlanta. I have a very good girlfriend who lives somewhere else also. And every now and then she and I talk about, while we were living in Atlanta, this is back in the early millennium, that I don't remember seeing a David's bridal. I've been to plenty office baby showers, but I never knew where a David's bridal was. Holcomb Bridge Road, Alpharetta, never knew where a David bridal was. And so for me, it was important to say, you know what? I want to be a part in a man's relationship who wants to get married. Clear. Ask the question and wait for the answer.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Well, if I may, again, that does speak to, as I was saying, in terms of waiting to see what the execution of that behavior is. We can have a great conversation. Our first date could last 5 hours and we talk until the sun rises. But if there is no execution of those goals, of those
Demonstration.
Dreams, if you can't demonstrate it to me, again, whether you're the bus driver or the owner of the company, then that speaks to, again, that character. And
we have to be honest too, right? Because even if the person is demonstrating something that just doesn't sit well, why can't we just say, you know what, this doesn't sit well with me. This is not good for me.
That's
not
getting
trying
back
to
to
do X, Y.
foundation.
No.
Well, but I
that's
also
not-
think that's part of the issue because for Black women, we wind up settling because there's so few Black men that are eligible. We wind up settling, and we see those cautionary
And we're-
flags, and we say, "Well,
That's it. That's it.
yeah."
And so we're I think a lot of women settle, and that to me is settling for less than who you are as a person, and it's not a financial component for me. Had I been in that previous relationship, can you say miserable? Like,
Yeah.
no, that's
Yeah.
not, and I would not have been pushed and encouraged to forget masters, and there would have not been a doctorate degree.
Yeah.
Because that person was all about, was I going to cook and clean and keep his house clean? I'm like, well, this is going to be my home too? Really?
That's right.
Right.
That's true.
Am I going to be the
It's all-
housekeeper? Like, what's
it's
happening
all
here?
right.
So,
All
yeah.
right. Yeah. Dr. Young, Dr. Harold, and Dr. Watson, we're going to get to y'all, man. It's y'all time, but I'm telling you right now, this seat is hot because these women done set it on fire. I'm telling you right now, I appreciate these great doctors. So Dr. Young, he done went and he had to go get a drink. He was like, man, we're going to get in this conversation.
Yeah, yeah, brother.
I done set you up, Dr. Young. I done set you
He's
up.
ready.
Yeah,
He's ready.
Yeah.
5 minutes, Dr. Young, you up, Frat. Go ahead.
So I'm gonna touch on the question, and that being, what recommendation would I make? Right. I'll date myself a little bit by this next reference, but MJ, who was probably one of the greatest entertainers of all time, and I mean Jackson, not Jordan, although Jordan is the GOAT. Michael Jackson said, he talked about the man in the mirror, and I'm saying that in a serious way, in that one of the things I think not enough folks tackle is this, all me, right? We've made it so much about what this other person needs to do and bring, and that I'm the prize and they've got to do this. Some of us fail, even us with doctorates and six-figure jobs and beautiful homes and, you know, vacation homes and boats and all that other stuff. We fail to do the work internally. We fail to divvy into an introspective place. We fail to look at self-care. Some of us fail to go lay down on somebody's couch and have a discussion and get back to repairing and reviewing the broken places of our heart and our past. And I'm in no way I leave that to our therapist crew here to kind of excise those things. But there are a lot of folks that fail to really work on the private places and the broken places within them, and they don't put two and two together. That I keep making the same decision over and over with the joke I lay down with, because I got a broken thing within me and I haven't fixed it. So I think like the first thing we need to all do, men alike too, right? Is go run and go see somebody and be okay with that, and be okay with beginning to fix the brokenness in us. One of the things for me personally was when I moved to Atlanta, I was moving to Atlanta getting divorced. And Atlanta is the worst place for a divorcee. Let me it tested all my Jesus, right? Because it just wasn't one of them. But to Dr. Rencher's point, Atlanta is a subculture of singleness. People love it in Atlanta. They love being single. I have female friends that left here and said, I'll never find a husband here. Female friend, she left Atlanta and said, I'm not going to find a husband here. Just everybody wants to play and date and have fun and kick it. And she moved to Charlotte, and within a year and a half, she was married.
Wow.
But Atlanta, again, there's Atlanta, Houston.
It's a culture. Yeah.
There's a subculture that, single is it. And so part of it is positioning, being in a place where there are more like-minded people. Kind of going back to something that I kind of sensed from when Dr. Daniel was talking in conversations I've had with female friends. And it's not a knock on anything relative to their preference, but there's something to be said about meeting someone kind of with similar background and interests in terms of how you see one another and how you get along and how you understand one another. Case in point, my first marriage, my ex-wife was, she was a hairstylist, didn't go to school, it just wasn't her thing. And so some things she didn't understand about my life. I'm going to homecoming to see the bruh. She like, why? I'm paying my dues to the alumni chapter in Kappa. Why are you doing that? It's stupid. There's just we're missing each other there in terms of she doesn't get where I'm coming from, and then I'm just like, okay, it just perspective was different. So I know women that are like, look, they're in Lynx, they're in Jack and Jill, they're in these certain affluent organizations, and they're like, look, I'm going to black tie events every other month, and I want a brother that I can sit down at the table and I can leave him with the people I'm with, and he ain't gonna embarrass me, right? You don't want him to start opening his mouth, and then when you get back, people looking at you different. So I completely understand that. So it becomes okay. The country, we have to think about this in a different way too. The U.S., this is all new to us in terms of women's rights, women's employment, women's education. This hasn't been 150 years where women have had these great jobs, getting these degrees at a higher level and at a disenfranchising, disproportionate point. This is fairly new. Last 50 years, it's really been like this. So we're still getting used to this, right? What the norm before was daddy worked, and he might have worked a blue collar job, and he took care of your mama and she took care of the house. And the next generation, you got a kid off to college, and the next generation, they got a master's degree. And then you were starting to build 3-4 levels down the lineage. You started to build that. So I think we're all getting to a new place where we're trying to understand our roles. And listen, we've switched roles, and it's not cool. I appreciate what my sisters do, but as a man, we have certain roles and responsibilities. And I just think that even beyond the economics, there's something to be said about the head and being able to be respected by your spouse and the work you do in the community and the work you do in your home. There's something to be said about that. And I encourage and challenge my brothers to step up, to be okay with being the head. Because I meet cats now and they're like, yeah, man, she taking care of me. It's not good. It's not good. But let me throw this back to the sisters before I jump off.
Yeah.
A lot of women say that they have these standards, such as Ebony K, and I get it, right? A woman that makes what's good. My question is twofold. What's enough, right? When a woman is making $2, $3, $4, $5 million a year, right? What's enough? Because I heard her on another interview, and some ladies that they said, hey, the high income revenue men that we desire, she said they lie. A lot of them say they want a woman that's getting it like we are, and they really want a housewife. So that's an interesting dynamic in itself. But what's enough? If a woman is making $2 or $3 million a year, there's some brothers that ain't scrubs, but he might not be getting. He's making $250,000 a year. He ain't a scrub. He's educated. Right. He can roll in your circle. Is that enough? And then the second part of the question is, why do some of those same women, the dude you see them creeping with, is a bum?
Oh.
You're like, where did she get him from?
Yeah.
He's nothing close to what you're saying the standard is. But I have a sneaky suspicion I know what it is. This is a PG-13 show, so I'm gonna just.
I'll tell you right there, Dr. Harold.
Leave that right there.
We need your perspective, Dr. Harold. Got 5 minutes, brother. You up?
First and foremost, is what kind of Dr. Young kind of mentioned is I would go back and forth and start with know thyself and being able to learn exactly who are you in every facet of your life. What does spirituality mean to me? What does my physicality mean to me? What does the way I eat, the people I spend time with, what does all of this mean to me? And just knowing this before you even step foot in a relationship is a big key in order for you to find like the right partner for yourself to kind of begin with. Because actually, once you kind of learn who you are by yourself, right? Usually when you get into a marriage, you're learning a different aspect of yourself because now you got to learn who you are in combination with this partner. How do I compromise? How do I communicate with this person? Learning, being able to develop these skills because it's a constant development of being able to work and process with this partner that you eventually will take on if you put in the work to better learn yourself. Another aspect to this is just this level of flexibility. Part of this having a checklist, and if this person doesn't necessarily meet this checklist, that means they're off the boat, they're voted off the island right away. We really have to take the time to kind of learn to to be some flexibility, because in relationships, and especially long-term successful relationships, there is flexibility. There's compromise, because if you got two walls that keep bumping into each other, it's never going to work, type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Choosing character traits, really looking at a person's character, because at the end of the day, this is a partnership when you do go into relationships for the long term. And my skill set of maybe I may be great at making money, but I may be terrible at saving it. And having somebody that can ground me in that level, these are different character traits that somebody may actually be bringing in to the relationship that you don't have. And a lot of times opposites do attract in that way, where you may have this person who's an introvert and the other person's an extrovert, but they learn how to compromise to make that relationship work. Other key traits to really build into is, which I know a lot of people here on this panel, is you have a lot of resiliency and grit. And a lot of these people, when you do go out and you're getting these high level of education, you've shown your ability to have this resiliency and grit. But when it comes time to being in a good partnership, you're not showing a level of resiliency and grit to stay within a partnership that's showing some quality traits. You need that same level, you need that same energy within a relationship that you use to get that degree. Yeah. And last piece, just about like generational wealth. I know she really doubled down in talking about everything from generational wealth and things in reference to a bus driver just kind of being average in this mediocrity type thing. The reality is, statistically speaking, 68% of us are average. And if you don't come, so everybody isn't going to get the 1%er. 68% of us are average, and we got to come to terms with what we're bringing to the table when it comes to these different relationships. You don't need two CEOs in the house. You need two partners that's willing to get there, fight together, be resiliency, and keep learning how to communicate with each other and take care of each other. So,
wow.
Woo.
Dr. Watson, my man, my frat. You can bring it on home. 5 minutes. You're up.
Just to stand on the shoulders of everyone that has spoke this evening. My question is, to answer your question, Dr. Turner, can imperfectly broken people have healthy relationships? Now I'm gonna date myself a little bit, and I know everybody on this call has seen this before. You've seen the movie Coming to America. That movie, when Eddie Murphy's character was traveling to the United States, came into the airport with all of this baggage. But it wasn't until he shed all that baggage and scaled down to a poor man's existence that he was able to focus and find the queen that he was looking for. So like what Dr. Young was saying, it's like my self-reflection. I have to deal with this trauma, and I have to deal with the things that I have, experienced. One of the things that I've seen a lot in my field in education, a lot of our children, and even with myself, we come from broken places we haven't seen healthy relationships. So we don't know what a healthy relationship looks like.
Come on with it.
And a lot of times, because we have not seen a healthy relationship, Dr. Young, that's when we slip into the situationship. And Dr. Turner, y'all know about ships. So you have to be careful with the situationship, because guess what? That ship might eventually sink. And then you drown in some mess that you did not otherwise want to get into. So you have to be honest with yourself. Like, wait a minute now, let me look in the mirror. Because that person on the other side of the mirror is the most important person in this equation. You got to take care of them first. And you can't come to a relationship broken trying to make a whole pie. It's not going to taste right. Something has got to be lined up. You have got to fix that. We've been taught, and then I'm going to talk about men. We've been taught not to share our feelings, not to have emotion. We're supposed to keep it all suppressed, but that's why we are uh, so poignant to have heart disease and stress and high blood pressure because we don't express ourselves and we keep it all in. Whereas women are expressive and they're supposed to, let out their emotion and talk to things, and but then they're deemed as being too emotional or catty, or they complain all the time. But the thing is, we ought to be able to meet each other and have a conversation about what's going on with us internally. That way we can get past all of the mess. Our society has pigeonholed us to be a certain way. We got to get out of the box. This is a generational thing that has to be broken. This is a
Mhm.
generational perspective that has to be broken because our people deserve better. We've gone through enough. And the last thing that we need to do is continuously attack one another when we all have experienced a broken place in some way, shape, or form. We are supposed to help each other get past the brokenness. There's an old gospel song that says you got to reach beyond the break. That's what
Mhm.
we gotta get beyond the break so we can hold on and bring this thing back together.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. These folks have been on with me for an hour and a half. I put this in the doc chat DM and said, who wants to jump on with me? And these 6 doctors within 30 minutes said, I want in. I want in on this conversation. And they have brought some incredible fire. We got a half an hour. I'm gonna give y'all another 5 more minutes. We're gonna go around. We gotta make sure we off right at 2 hours, but I'm giving y'all final thoughts. Everybody who's been watching this, who's been commenting, questions, everything. Thank y'all so much. Just incredibly powerful. I mean, I just can't even put it into words. These folks got to get up and go to work in the morning, and they saying, JT, I want to be on with you. And I appreciate y'all so much, more than y'all know. So we're going to go around one last time. We're going to go back in original order. So we're going to start with Dr. James, and we're going to go,
Yes.
man, woman, or woman, man, woman. We're going to do that. But as you close out, final thoughts, and if you could give, because we had a great question from my guy Jonathan here. I want to make sure we got to it. Make sure our black and brown boys are matching our sisters, and the other way. Make sure basically energy is matching.
Yes.
What are
That
your final
energy is
thoughts
matching.
and making sure
Final
energy is
thoughts.
matching? 5
Okay,
minutes. You're
final
up.
thoughts. 5 minutes. I'm gonna say first of all, I'm gonna say thank you, JT, for having us on the show. This was an amazing, amazing opportunity. But my final thoughts. If I'm gonna say anything about matching energy, if I'm gonna say anything about what can make this better going forward, we have to implement breakdown to build up. Some of us know what that means, right? In every aspect of life, I've seen this happen, except for relationships. We don't go into the relationship with, let me go ahead and break this down to the most basic of instincts to build it back up. We want to go into it ready made already. We start with employment. We come at the ground level. Let's build you up to where you need to be, right? No matter, even if you're coming in as an executive, you are low level, right? You just coming into this thing. We're going to build you up to where we want you to be, right? You're not coming in as a CEO. I'm in the military. I didn't come in as the NCO that I am. I'm active duty now. I came in at the ground level. And I was an older sailor coming in. Didn't matter. You're starting out, you come in, we break you down to build you up. I still had to go to boot camp like everybody else. They broke me down to build me up. I'm Greek. There's 3 other Greeks on here. Break you down to build you up. Why do we look at relationships differently? We have to break those. I heard what you said, Dr. Watson, about women being sensitive. That used to be the perspective. Now we put up more walls than the men. We you gonna have to climb these walls, go around them, dig under them, and you still might not get over them. You know what I'm saying? So the walls are there. There's no breaking it down anymore, but you need to show some level of vulnerability. If nobody wants to be vulnerable, how is this gonna work? If nobody wants to show the true me, you're gonna get the representative until I know that I'm not getting the representative anymore. Well, if we both showing representatives, when do we show the real person? When do we get past this level of you're not gonna hurt me? I'm gonna hurt you before you hurt me. Not gonna happen. When do we get past that? I think we're so guarded. We don't want to let go. We don't want to, like Dr. Daniel said. I don't want to settle. I don't want to go where I don't want to be. And I get that. But at what point do we compromise? At what point do we break? Because this list is breaking us. As Black women, this list is breaking us. There are brothers out here that we should be picking from, and we're not because they don't match every criteria on our list. They don't fit in the description of what we're looking for. So we don't even entertain the ideology of them being there. We won't even let them see any aspect of vulnerability within us. And then even the ones that make the list, I still don't want you to see that vulnerable side of me. So how can I let you even get close to me to make anything real?
Yeah. No. Man.
We got to change our perspective. You change your perspective, you change your attitude. You change your attitude, you change your outcome.
That's good right there. That's Dr. James, folks. Dr. Young. We got probably put about 3 minutes because we got to make sure we get everybody in. So 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. And I can condense, no problem. Thank you for having me, and thank everyone else for taking the time to get on. I appreciate the feedback from all of you, bright, intelligent, Black, magical folks, right? So I would probably say Dr. James really captured one thing that relative to energy, and when she talked about, going back to Anna's point with Ebony K. Williams about masculine versus Ebony K. Williams I don't know her, I just seen the interview. She has a masculine energy. Absolutely. And so that's fine, right? But some of the same women talk about leadership, and they talk about, the head and wanting the man having those characteristics. But if it becomes a battle with you all, that's what it becomes, right? It becomes a boxing match on who's winning. And, some men just don't have the energy for it. They have the fortitude, but they just like, I don't want to deal with that. So I think it's just kind of, going back to the point about vulnerability and those certain places. But I think it's about education in this sense. How many times have some of those women that say, I want a husband, how many times have they gone to an older woman who was married and maybe husband has gone on to be with the Lord, but she's still here, or gone on to an older couple and said, let me have lunch, let's drink coffee, let's drink tea. Tell me about, just sit down and tell me about it. And then those folks, that older couple that's in their 70s and maybe 60s, maybe 80s, will start telling you about how they robbed Peter to pay Paul, but they sent kids to college, how they built this thing together, but how love was at the center. When you see that, man, it's a whole nother level of love that they had and affection for one another. And it didn't have anything to do with, because many of those couples came up in a time where it was just hard for everybody. So they weren't the 1% getting out, getting PhDs, buying big houses. They had each other, and they wrapped around each other, and they wrapped around the spirit of the Lord and how it connected them. So sometimes you just got to go sit at the feet of the elders. You'll learn so much.
That's it. Dr. Young, folks, Dr. Young. Dr. Daniel, you are up. 3 minutes. Can we get 3 solid minutes?
All right, I'm gonna try to do this in 3 minutes. So
all right.
I'm gonna break this down because I think there are some levels here. So at the therapist and me, I'm gonna start at the macro level, because I think this, as you said, Dr. Young, we've got work to do, not just at the individual level, at the micro level, but we've got work to do in our society. So macro level, I think in order for Black women to have a better opportunity for a better, larger dating pool, as Dr. James and Dr. Winter have both alluded to, I think we've got to look at disrupting the jailhouse pipeline, because that's one of the things that takes away our Black men from our communities like nobody's business. So we've got to disrupt that. I think we need to work on ending the educational disparities that we have between Black men and Black women, because that also puts Black women in a position where the pool that we are picking from is much smaller. It also puts Black men in a position where they've got more options. And that can also mean that sometimes they're not bringing their full honest self to the table.
Okay.
So I think we need to work on that. I think we need to provide community level opportunities for Black men to build the bridge between themselves and us. And that means having YMCAs, local boys and young girls clubs, all of those things where Black men have places where they can go and express themselves. As you said, Dr. Young, learning how to express themselves in a way that's healthy. I think we also at the macro level need to encourage addressing the post-traumatic stress that is within our communities that Black men and women deal with. Post-traumatic slave syndrome, I talk about that in my dissertation, Dr. DeJoy. We have so much of that to deal with, which has put us, as you said, Dr. James, at odds with each other on so many different levels. We need to be able to address that. And that's a macro level, because that's not just us. That's the whole system that needs to deal with that. I think at the meso level, we need to work at changing the perceptions of Black men and women, not only within our own cultures, but the way society looks at us as well. The tropes that we get for Black women, the angry Black woman, you know, the mandingo for the man. We need to work on changing those tropes, because those are also some of those standards that we come into relationships thinking we need to either build or meet or have as a part of that dynamic. At the micro level, I think we need to slow down the process, as Dr. Harold said as well. I think we need to go back to courtship. We need to go back to dating. We need to be able to look at each other and get to know each other on a more personal level. Wait until the honeymoon phase is over and you take down that mask and you start to really see how a person is. Where is their action that goes with all that good conversation you got over the wine and the lobster tails and all that stuff when you went out to dinner? Where's the action? Give yourself enough time to have that action come in there. As Dr. Harold said, we all need to come and do our own work. And again, that's also at the macro level, because I think systemically, we need to promote mental health for everybody. And I think if we all came into relationships with a little bit more of that, we'd be in a better place. And then the last one I would say, as I tell all of my clients, you need to be able to be honest with yourself and acknowledge cautionary and red flags in any relationship when you see them. That doesn't mean that they can't be overcome or dealt with, but you need to be honest about what they are and how they impact whether or not you can build with this particular person. Because if you can't and you settle, as everybody has said, you're going to wake up 5-10 years later and be like, oh man, what did I do? And I just wasted all this time. So acknowledge the cautionary flags and talk about them, address them, so that you have an opportunity to know whether this person truly can do what they need to do to be with you as a partner, or they can't, and you guys can equitably go your separate ways. I'm done.
Absolutely powerful. That's Dr. Daniel, folks. Dr. Daniel. Dr. Harold, 3 minutes, my brother, 3 minutes. Wrap it up. Bring it to me. What you got?
All right. First and foremost, just talk about, like, it's all about picking people with great character traits to begin with. And I'm looking back to an experience that we've all had, a trauma that we've all had recently, which is the pandemic, right? And the pandemic, during that time frame, we got to learn a few things. We got to learn who was essential. We got to learn how important our bus drivers and the people that work behind the counter actually were. And then we also got a chance to really look at relationships, right? And what we learned is, like, some of these people who may have chosen each other because of their career initially, they got to spend like 24/7 together, and they found out, you know what, I really don't like this person that I'm with. And shortly after, they were leaving each other after this pandemic was over. So really getting back into really learning about, like, this person that's across from me, is this a good partner for me? Am I taking the time to invest in this person and learn more about this person for me? Does this person bring the character traits that I find that are not only important on a daily basis, but everything to spirituality? How do they interact with my family, friends, and other relationships that I find important? So just keeping these things in mind is what's, you know, important going forward. And as I said before, just as the way we look at generational wealth overall speaking, going back and actually doing the education, because while our degrees are beautiful, you don't need a degree to be educated. Education never stops. And just like we're researchers, you can continue to, these days, you can get much of your knowledge through YouTube and learn a lot of the things you need to know to operate in the world. So I don't just, when I'm working with people, I don't just look and say, hey, you need to go to college. And I don't even look at necessarily the brothers need to catch up with the sisters, because the truth of the matter is I got a son right now and I'm talking to him and he's like, I don't know if I want to go to college. Well, I've been in the workforce, and I was like, well, if you don't want to go to college, I know places where you could be making 75 to 80 grand within the next 2 years as long as you follow this route. Is it wrong? Does he need this, like a doctorate degree if he wants to get in these kind of industries that can help to create wealth and make him a great partner and a provider? So that's where I leave it.
Absolutely, Carl. Dr. Harold. Dr. Harold. Dr. Rencher, 3 minutes.
I will do my best. Dr. Harold, I think a lot, therefore I am, right? But Dr. Harold, I like what you said about your son not possibly going in the university route, college route. My son, similarly, middle school, but he's already talking about he likes technology, but he also finds other things interesting. Even though I'm a researcher and both of my parents were academicians, I still don't necessarily believe that I need to push either of my children into the academics because that may not be where they may thrive. And so to answer the question about what do we need to do as a community, I can't let you guys know this discussion is actually a global discussion. In the Bahamas, most of my classmates from high school are not married. It's just a thing. My husband is always amazed. Some are, but many of them are not. Many of them who have high academics, and many of them would say, I wish I'd gotten married to that guy in Wales or that guy in Canada. I should have stayed in Canada or in Wales or in England or wherever they studied because I would have had a better opportunity to get married. And I think the overall system, as Dr. Daniel has said, it's a cultural thing where we are the first generation in many situations to get as advanced, to get as many people being academic as well as professionally astute. And I think the challenge that we need to do is to, number one, get back to our cultural roots. Get back to sitting down with your aunties. And if your parents were not married, then go find an auntie. Go find somebody in your community. Go find that elderly couple who is going to be pouring into your life. My parents did not necessarily have the healthiest relationship, but I have older girlfriends who are almost my mother's age range, and they are married for 35, 45, whatever years. And so before my husband and I even thought about even getting engaged and getting married, I started asking them questions. First of all, I wasn't the best cook. I cook really well right now, but I watched the Food Network. I watched YouTube. I took cooking classes because I wanted to get better at things that I know my husband likes to eat. And so I wanted to do things that was going to necessarily serve and support our union. And I think a lot of times women are so focused on, does he bring this? And here's what I bring. But are you thinking about what can you do to soften the blow in that person's life? In the pandemic, my husband was an essential worker. And for many people, that was like, oh, the nurses. Well, they were banging pots in New York City. Here in Tennessee, there were no pots being banged. Every single day my husband came home, it was another death toll. And so I had to figure out quickly how to not only sterilize everything, but to keep him safe. And he works not only with trauma patients, but he also works with heart patients. On any given day, he could lose a patient. And then he comes home with that conversation of, I don't feel like talking because I lost X, Y, and Z, or this has happened, or that has happened. And so when you're considering the possibility of joining your life with somebody else's life, what you do academically and professionally makes a matter to your personal life, absolutely. But when it comes to joining your lives together, how can you best support that person? And even more, how do you work together? And I think if you sit down with older persons who have done it successfully, everybody's journey is unique, absolutely. But if you sit down with older persons who have weathered the storm, who have survived Jim Crow, who have survived the civil rights era, who have survived the 80s and the 90s and the early millennium, and they're still together, maybe they may have some life lessons for you and give you some recipes, give you some tips of the trade, help you to unpack some things in your own journey, to help you to say, you know what, I'm not as brilliant as I think I am. If I'm still making Jiffy out of the box, I'm not really that brilliant. And so I think it's important for us to make certain that we get back to a sense of community. So community to me is the most important thing. It works in my life. I have people who still speak into my life. They know my husband. They send birthday cards because they are constantly praying and believing for us. And above all else, they help us to recognize that we are not in this journey alone.
Yeah, amazing. That's Dr. Rencher, folks. Dr. Rencher. Dr. Watson, Oh, well, I tell you, we all rubbing our hands together. We already know, brother. You are up. Let me give you a strong 3 minutes. You are up, sir.
Um, again, Dr. Turner, thank you so much for having us on tonight. This has been a very, very powerful conversation. Um, of course, you gonna let me be last, and so I have to say something
Profound.
profound.
Let's speak your mind, brother. Speak your mind.
But what I want to say here, and it's kind of surmising everything that has been said, is we just have to be careful when we're talking about matching energy, and don't mistake it for conditioning ourselves to settle. We have to continue to use our spiritual timepiece to watch our time and not waste our time, because wasted time you can't get back. Um, we have to be very, very honest with ourselves and not be caught up in a spiritual neighborhoods mindset. Instead, we need to have a, as Dr. Renfrew said, a spiritual community mindset. What is the difference? Neighborhoods go on what other people tell you. Communities control the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
We have to control the narrative when it comes to this whole relationship piece. Again, we talk about looking at ourselves. Step one, take a good long look at yourself. Where are you going? What are you doing? What are you bringing to the table? You are so concerned about the other person, but what about you? Because when you are doing that, guess what? The attraction will come. You don't have to work hard. It'll come to you when you least expect it. But you got to make sure to take care of you first. You can't go out there looking for somebody and you're broken and you're torn down. You have to be prepared to be the best you and be the best representative of yourself. So when that energy comes, you'll see that energy is gonna come. It's gonna jump right on you. Be like, wow, I wasn't even expecting that. But you have to make sure you take care of that part. That's extremely, extremely important. Everybody's talking about, talking to someone who's been through the struggle. I don't know if y'all, some people on this podcast may not understand this, but one of the things that Betty Wright said that she talked to a older lady sitting under a tree, and the old lady said, "I was learning my man while I was earning my man." See, I'm going through the process of just learning who he is, because I know right now, even with my own spouse, I can tell you what she likes, what she don't like. If my kids come in and say, "Well, Dad, we got this for Mama," I can be like,
Mm-hmm.
work,
Mm-mm.
work.
The
Mama
setup.
not like, Mama not gonna like that. Or even with myself, if I'm gonna get something, I'll tell my daughter, say, "Hey, go talk to your mama and see what she think about this." And if she comes back,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "Yeah, all right, yeah, I thought that, I figured it, but I wanted to make sure before I went forward." And Mother's Day is coming up, so you got to make sure you're on point when it comes to getting those Mother's Day gifts. So that's important. But overall, ladies and gentlemen, it's just important that we make sure we do some self-reflecting and close that part, close that chapter before you go opening up another chapter, trying to journey with someone else.
Powerful. Absolutely powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have to watch the folks. We have Dr. Donridge Young. We have Dr. Anika James, Dr. Michelle Rensher, Dr. Valerie Daniel, Dr. Jonathan Harrell, Dr. Trenton Watson. You didn't see us argue one time. We didn't get all up in our emotions and feelings. This was a very respectable conversation. And many of them have said it, and we just did this tonight. We're changing the narrative of who we are, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Black people are intelligent, they're spiritual, they're happy, they're healthy, and they're loving. And we all, 7 doctors tonight, showed you that. And we're going to continue to show you that, because I'm telling you, God has some things in store for these doctors on here. And the best is truly yet to come. This is your man, Dr. John C. Turner, aka the Professor JT, and the Doc Chat will be with you on Thursdays. But as we wrap up, final word I will say, and everybody stayed on here that watched. I know people that just have this cut on, they're just listening through their TVs or phones or whatever. Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much. Everybody that tuned in, everybody checked out. But if I could say one thing, a lot of us were born in the deep end of the pool. We're trying to make it to the shallow end. But as you're trying to make it to that shallow end, where life is a little bit better, life's a little bit easier, pull somebody else up with you. Please do it.
Yes.
Because I'm telling you right now, none of us are going to make it unless we are all helping each other make it all the way together. I'm telling you right now.
Yes.
So I want to say thank you. Thank you, everybody that tuned in. Y'all go get some rest. Y'all have a blessed week. I still have that word from the Lord. May is the month of the move. Things are moving on behalf of God's people. Y'all keep moving forward. And God's going to open up many doors for y'all. We'll see y'all soon. God bless y'all. Doctors, thank y'all so much. Y'all have a great evening.
And thank you too, sir.